If you're thinking of making the move to the Minneapolis area, but you're feeling a little uncertain because you don't know anyone who has done this, you should stay tuned. I'm Mary Schumann, and I am a realtor here in the Minneapolis area, and I help a lot of people that are making the move to Minnesota from out of state. And today, I have the absolute privilege of talking to some of my favorite clients that have moved here in the past year. Matt and Erin Proctor, they moved to the Minneapolis area from the Los Angeles area of California about this time last year. And in this video, we have a pretty wide-ranging conversation about what their experience was like coming clear across the country, why they made this move, and how they feel about it now that they are here. So this is a pretty long video, and honestly, I edited about an hour of it out already, so I'm just going to let it go, and I'm going to put chapters in my description box for you. You can skip around to topics that seem to fit your particular area of concern. In this video, what I really wanted was just to let Matt and Erin say what they wanted to say and let that speak for itself. I also have a playlist called Real Life Relocation, and that is a series of other interviews that I have done with clients that have made this big move across the country from places like Texas, a lot of Texas, honestly, and St. Louis. I'm trying to think who else is in there. Check it out. Anyway, go ahead and watch that and see what the rest of the people have to say. If you're curious about anything related to moving to Minnesota, please reach out and I'll do whatever I can to help you. Also, I have a relocation guide that you're welcome to download. It's linked in the description box down there as well. And I want to apologize in advance because it's a little over eager right now and it's sending all kinds of information. So you're going to get everything you wanted and more. Anyway, enjoy.
Well, I'm Erin. And this is my husband, Matt. We're the Proctors. We're both born and raised in Southern California. We lived in Westminster, California for like the last 15 years. And I had family here growing up. So I've been visiting Minnesota since I was little. And then I didn't think I found out until fairly recently. We've been together 21 years, but apparently he'd been to Minnesota when he was younger too.
My freshman year of high school, my dad and I helped a good friend of his move from Southern California to White Bear Lake.
Oh, really?
And that was my first introduction into Minnesota, and I loved it even back then.
How old were you?
I was probably 13.
Okay.
And growing up in Southern California and being a hocky fan, coming to Minnesota was a big deal because it's where all the hockey.
I was like, that's they call us the state of hockey, right? So,
yes.
Not that I know anything about hockey.
The past few times that we visited, we had one of Erin's cousins got married. Unfortunately, there was a death in the family, so we had been out multiple times over the course of 2 years, was it?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 years.
2-3 years. And every time we would come back, we would stay in Northeast Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. And every time we were there, we were just like, hey, we could get used to this. And we would joke about it, and every time we left, we would be sad that we were leaving and excited to come back. So when it looked like the house was going to be for sale that we were renting, we started thinking about where do we want to be. Because
do we pick something else here, or do we...
We knew that we didn't want to rent because the rental prices in Southern California are ridiculous, and we'd be
stuck renting forever if we did that.
Right, and we would be paying the same amount in rent that we would have paid for a mortgage on a house. Not necessarily in Southern California, but just about anywhere else. So that was one of the things that we really were thinking about. Where can we go that we could afford to buy a house so we're not wasting money in rent?
Yeah. Places that would work for him. I am an artist and I work from home, so I could kind of go anywhere, and it was mainly going to be like wherever he could find a good new gig. So the one place that we really, really researched was Delaware.
Really?
I remember, yeah.
Yes, Delaware.
So what brought that to the top of your radar?
There was a job there that I was really interested in. The housing prices were reasonable.
Okay.
We liked what we saw.
Is it less expensive there than here, or do you even know?
Yes, less expensive there.
And I guess like the tax situation there is really good.
It's very, very friendly on the taxes. So yeah, we looked at Delaware. As we started to whittle down locations, weather was one of the key things. We wanted seasons.
You guys kind of got gypped this year.
We did. We'll get it.
I don't know. I feel like that was our introductory practice winter. I'm kind of glad we were over-prepared, so I feel like we're ready.
For anyone watching this, these guys have lived here 1 year?
1 year.
Yeah.
What was your anniversary? Like, it was in...
August 14th was the official day we drove into town.
But it was a very warm winter. But you guys looked at a couple other states, and you ended up coming here because you had familiarity with it, and you like the seasons, and you found a job. Well, actually, you didn't. You came.
I didn't.
Yeah, that's actually what helped us choose Minnesota. Ultimately, is because at first we were like, okay, we know we have to leave California. We're not going to be able to buy a house anywhere in California. But then his boss offered him the option to work from home, which ended up only being a temporary situation, but it lasted long enough for us to get out of California and get into a place. But because now we had the job thing sorted and we didn't have to worry about that, now we could go anywhere we wanted. Mm-hmm. And that's when we really started talking about, okay, well then, where have we been that we know that we like, or where do we want to visit? And we didn't really end up going anyplace new.
We had a plan where we were going to take a week off and travel to 2 or 3 places to see how we liked it. And the more we started talking about what we wanted, Minnesota was kind of ticking those boxes. And then the more we thought about it, we'd never been through any kind of winter before, or
never lived in snow.
Never lived in snow. There's just certain things that people don't tell you. You just know from living here. As to an outsider, it can be very strange and foreign, and you don't know what to do.
A little bit, because we don't know what we don't know. Very intimidating.
So you guys got an easy introduction, but so were you a little bit worried about that? You're saying, or you?
A little bit. I was worried about what haven't we seen in a YouTube video, or what what's going to surprise us, because we research things pretty hard, but there's always going to be things that you just kind of have to be there to know. And I think that's where we were like, we like Minnesota. We've been there a bunch of times, so it's not totally new and foreign to us. And we also have family there, yes, and a lifeline in case we need to Mayday.
So your family is close by to where you guys bought, right?
Relatively. They're about a half hour away.
So if you want to share, you don't have to, where you guys ended up buying your house and kind of what led to that decision about that area and maybe that home in particular. I mean, you guys are one of my favorites because you have very distinct taste, and you weren't looking for a cookie cutter home by any means. I mean, you might be able to tell they are not cookie cutter people, but so it was fun because one thing that we have a lot of here are mid-century homes, and that was kind of your jam, right? So.
Yeah, and we were talking about that recently. We didn't realize. So when I think of Minnesota homes, I just think of the ones that I remember seeing growing up, driving from the airport to more of the southwest side of the cities where my grandparents' farm was.
You did look at houses kind of.
Yeah, that's what I thought that's what I was picturing, so that's what I thought I wanted. That's just what I associated with here specifically. But I didn't realize, and you were saying the other day, we didn't realize how many mid-century houses were here and whole neighborhoods. Because I just never been that far out into the suburbs, really. I never even saw them.
And probably this second or third ring, you start seeing those homes built in the 60s and 70s, and there's just Rambler City out there, and you guys ended up in a Rambler.
Yeah.
We did.
I was really excited, and we've discovered that really watching your videos I think the first one I remember is when you went through, I want to say Golden Valley.
Yeah, probably Golden Valley or New Hope. Those both have.
Yeah, and we were like, oh, there's these kinds of neighborhoods out here, and we had.
You guys bought your house because of the oven.
We did. It was the oven and the doorknobs around and the glitter on the ceiling when you walk in.
Yeah, walking into that house had been the upper level had not been touched. And it was still very much 1963. Yep. My dad just recently came to visit, and he's like, it's like I'm in the 60s.
Yeah. What did Uncle Mark came in and said, I feel like I'm walking onto the Ed Sullivan Show. I'm like, good, I have achieved my goal.
Yeah,
You guys got a huge lot too.
Oh my gosh, it's what, a half acre? Like, it's
Big,
gigantic.
mature trees.
and that was one thing that I really wanted. Originally, after staying in Northeast Minneapolis, we thought that that's where we wanted to be.
You did mention that, and we did look there.
And we did look there, and after looking there and visiting with an eye towards living there, not just visiting for a week.
Yeah.
The narrow streets, the houses being very close together.
Really steep stairs.
Very
really
steep.
Teeny rooms. Like
Old houses.
Old houses.
Cute.
Absolutely.
Cute houses. I think I remember saying, like, if I was, like, single, or if it was, like, me and my sister or something in college, that would have been perfect. But we're more
I wanted a little
now.
more elbow room. We had some interesting neighbors.
But for me, like, I thought for sure I wanted to live in Northeast because I'm an artist and that's where it's all happening. That's where all our favorite restaurants and stuff are. But I think that's one of the reasons we went to that restaurant, is because we're like, all right, let's see how far it takes to get from Psycho Susie's back home, if this is it. And it was like 12 minutes. And we were like, oh, you know what? Like,
That was the thing when looking at Minneapolis and the suburbs on a map. Fridley seemed very far out looking at the map, knowing where her aunt lives in Lake Minnetonka, being somewhat familiar with that area. Fridley just seemed like it was so far away. But then when we got here and actually started driving around, it was not that far away. And I think that one of the misconceptions I had about Minneapolis is it is a big metropolitan city, but it's pretty compact.
Yeah.
It's not as sprawling as like Los Angeles.
Yeah. I think like that's one of the things. So you guys have the experience that I would say most people that I work with have, which is coming from some place that's just miserable to drive in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say that I always love driving around here, but it is way easier to get from one side of the city to the other.
It is.
way.
I do have somebody. What else were you worried about when you were making your move?
I was worried, like, logistically, I was worried about how we were just gonna get all of us there.
All of us, meaning
we don't have children. I am a childless cat lady, and we have 7.
Seven babies.
7 of my little fur babies, and they getting a pod, packing up our stuff, getting those shipped, like that all made sense to me. That sounded like it all made sense, no problem. At that point, I wasn't worried about finding a house because, Mary had told us, don't worry, it will find you. And you're right. But then when it came to, okay, once that's all done and we have to move these cats across the country, like, how in the world? And up until we were physically in the van doing it, I never could believe that part was going to be possible.
And how were the kitties?
They were great. It was amazing. I was so worried about it. Matt was
Isn't it amazing how, like, all these things that are, like, the scariest things ever, that your brain is just circling, like, and, like, I always feel like I have a squirrel going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I can't figure out the answer to this. But it all comes together anyway.
It totally did.
It did.
And he knew it would, and that sort of helped my anxiety, because I'm like, well, he's usually right. And
That's what we were going to talk about, is the process that you guys took to look for your property. Because I have all kinds of scenarios that people follow, like some just look completely remotely, some come in person, some do hybrid, and you guys did, you came in person. And how long were you here? You were only here for like...
we were here for 10 days.
Oh, you were here for 10 days.
Yeah.
Gosh, my brain, I'm just like, I don't know. It felt like 3 days.
It did. It went by really fast.
It did.
Because you didn't look really that whole time. You looked for a good... Didn't we get you under contract kind of early in the...
Yeah, it was
Yes.
It was like 3 days in, I think.
I think it might have been 3 days in. It was only the 4th house that we looked
saw.
at. And then when we went to sit down and have a chat about the 4 we had seen, and we knew that we liked the house in Fridley, we decided, well, we better jump on it.
Yeah.
Because at that time there was not a lot of inventory.
Yep.
Yeah.
Still not,
So
by the way.
Especially not with what we were looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some inventory, but it wasn't. It didn't have. Some of the houses didn't have the feel we were looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt like this is the one. I don't want to compromise. Let's just make an offer without going, spending another couple days looking.
Yeah. Well, and we did end up looking at a couple more because things were
Just
getting...
to reassure yourself.
Yeah, I remember you saying...
Because I think this was a competing offer on this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just one, though.
There was one offer already, and then I remember you saying, like, just to be safe, like, we still have a couple houses on the list.
Yeah,
like, let's go ahead
okay.
and keep looking just in case.
Okay, so you guys looked in person. We got it under contract, and you were still here. Were you here for the inspection?
Yeah,
You were
just
for the
we
inspection.
that was one of the best things about how that worked out is we got to be here for that.
That was a very important part. I wanted to make sure that we got an inspection.
Yeah.
Because moving from California, we're, for example, I've never cleaned the gutters on the house in California. It never rained. You never needed to. It was... You didn't have inclement weather. You didn't have snow. You didn't have these
You mean because
considerate...
you didn't even know what to look at.
I didn't know
Right,
what to look
right.
for
We'd be
in a
looking for
house
things-
in this climate.
We'd be looking through California eyes, but
Right.
And we wanted to get an inspection to look at some of the things that are unique to Minnesota. Ice dams. Where might they form? What
Right.
does the plumbing look like? They're just some small things that
And we have totally different, like, heating and air conditioning, like, things, don't we, than California?
Yes,
Like,
I
the way
mean,
that we...
there was the house had a humidifier built in, which
Mm-hmm.
is not something we're used to seeing. It was a very different. It's just the houses are a little bit different here.
Mm-hmm.
No houses in California have basements.
not really. Yeah. So I mean, here and there.
Here and there,
it's not
but I
like-
don't know what to look for
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to owning a house with a basement.
Basements seem to be a big topic for people that are moving from out of state. It's kind of funny because I've never really lived in a place where we didn't have them.
Oh,
So I don't think about it quite as much, but everybody else...
they're
always-
rare. They're rare in California.
Do you like having a basement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and we have like
Yours isn't...
we have the walkout, so it's not like
Yeah.
super basement-y. But we like that's where we live basically. That's
Yeah.
like where our bedroom and bathroom and my
Oh,
studio
really?
is. So
We're
we're
ended upstairs.
yeah we're downstairs most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nice to have a laundry room. Our washer and dryer was out in the garage that you had to go outside to get to before.
My grandparents lived in Florida and they had it in their carport.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
and I'm so used to the washer dryer has always been at least out in the garage. But yeah, at our old house, we had to go outside a
I
little.
mean, you said that you were in California your whole life, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, what was the reaction that people had about you moving to Minnesota, and do they still feel that way? And like, how did you deal with that?
My mom thinks I'm nuts.
Yeah.
She thinks I'm.
Has she been?
She has not.
Oh,
She does not like bugs, and she does
Do
not
you
like
not
the
have
cold. So
bugs?
she lives in San Diego,
uh-huh.
and they have bugs, but not like here. No, they do have some.
I don't
bugs,
feel like
but
it's that bad though. And I mean, I don't like.
I don't think it's that bad here either, but she's very sensitive
Yeah.
to it. She doesn't like it.
I think she has a notion of it that's not exactly.
So she
true.
hasn't been, and she's just
Yeah.
going off of.
She's heard horror stories.
She's waited for us to live here a year and tell her like what's going to be the best
time.
time to come. She wants to come during that.
I mean, you don't want bugs. Come in February.
Yeah, but she also hates snow and she doesn't
So
like cold.
that would be a bad time to come in February.
Yeah.
And she just thinks we are nuts. Why would you leave California, especially for some place that snows?
Yeah.
And
And frankly, if we could have afforded to buy a house in California, we probably would have. But I don't know. That I say that, but then we've been talking about just wanting to get out for a long time. So
yeah,
So that's an interesting thing, is because where we started this conversation, and I asked you about why and all that kind of stuff, and you were talking about housing prices and jobs and all this kind of. But it's like I sometimes feel like or wonder if people are being like frog marched out of their state, like forced out. They would
Yeah.
prefer to be there. Or not, are you making a choice because you're like ready to go anyway? And I don't know if you have the answer to that question. I know we weren't really necessarily, when we came, I knew I didn't want to be where I was.
mm-hmm.
So it was like when my husband was like, well, what about Minneapolis? Because he had gotten a job here. I had never been here.
Oh, wow.
I had never even, Minnesota hadn't even crossed my mind. But I immediately said yes because I was like, oh, I want a city,
Mm-hmm.
but I want it to be small. We lived in Chicago. I wanted it to be a little smaller, more accessible and all this stuff. And I knew I still wanted the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, how bad can it be? And everybody that I talked to when I told them we were moving to Minneapolis was like, oh, you're so lucky. So I felt good about it before I even saw it.
Yeah.
But did you guys feel like you were being pushed out, or you felt like you did want to move?
Kind of. It's a little bit of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both for sure. It's hard to leave family and we
What
both
used to,
grew up there, and we.
Okay. Just because it's like, I feel like sometimes, like, the longer you stay in a particular place, like, so much harder to leave, because now you, like, I don't know, our minds and bodies and everything get, like, we like our habits.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We like familiarity. We don't want to have to, because moving is a big, like, even just when you move to a new city, and you're figuring out simple things. Where do I get my hair cut?
Yeah.
Where
Still haven't figured that out.
Yeah, me neither.
Where do I go to the grocery store? You know,
Yeah.
what's going to be my favorite place? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, small things that it feels like it's taxing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of brain energy that goes into that maybe you don't want to expend. So,
Yeah. I mean, I like that part of it. I
I
think
do
that's
too.
fun because, I mean, that's kind of what our favorite thing to do is just like travel and then find all the cool spots wherever we go. But it's weird. I didn't even realize how kind of attached to California I was until we left. Because all I did was complain about it most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
The traffic and the weather for me, like, it was just hot all the time. And it takes an hour to get anywhere at least. And you're just bumper to bumper all the time. So we just never really went anywhere. And, like, that was more than, like, a 15-minute drive from the house. But, and now here, like, everything's like 20 minutes from the house. Even if you want to drive clear across town, it's amazing. Yeah, it was a little bit of being pushed out because, we found out that the house we were renting was going to be sold, and we didn't know when. So we were going to have to move somewhere within probably the next year. So that was, not our choice.
would you even consider buying the house that was?
We tried. So his grandparents actually owned our house, and we rented from them. And it was getting to the point where, Grandma was going into a care facility, and Grandpa was getting older and thinking towards the future. And we, several times over the years living there, talked to him about buying the house. And he said, no, you'll have to, figure that out after we're gone, basically. And, buy the house from...
But I really need a place to live.
And, that whole time we were like, we really wanted to feel settled. Yeah, and because we had this constant, like, feeling of like, well, are we going to be here forever? Like,
when's the shoe going to drop?
Right.
When are they going to say, okay, that's it?
That's it. Yeah,
We're going to sell the house.
Like either they're, once they pass, it'll, there'll be weird family weirdness with dividing the estate up, and I'd seen that happen with my family, and then they were talking about selling it, more quickly. So we were feeling kind of pushed. So we start looking around, what are we going to do? I have a studio set up, I'm a jeweler and a metalsmith. Like, where am I?
Heavy equipment.
Yeah, where am I going to find a rental that's going to let me run an acetylene tank in my spare bedroom, right?
Along with
7 cats.
Yeah.
So there was that daunt, because it's like, okay, we could move and rent something. It's going to be way smaller. I'm not going to be able to work from home anymore, and we're going to have to get rid of all or at least most of our cats, and I can't do that. Like, and I guess if it was an emergency, like, we would have had to, but we start looking around, and immediately, we're priced. I mean, there's nowhere in California we could have even dreamed of buying a house. I mean, I think I found one house way up north in a little town I'd never heard of that was the same price as the one we ended up buying, and it was like above like Sacramento.
Yeah, Southern
and there was
California.
nothing around it.
There was not. I mean, you could go inland quite a bit, but then
in
you're
a desert, right?
Yeah.
it's a desert. Not really what we were looking for. Also, would have made my commute.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no jobs up there for us unless we started like a farm or something.
Yeah, it would have been a heck of a commute, and that's a lot of time in the car, a lot of windshield time, a lot of gas.
Yeah. Expensive gas.
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, it just wasn't going to work. Would we have stayed if housing prices were
Lower?
Lower? Maybe, probably, but we had been. It's funny. The house that we lived in was 888 square feet, and it just sold a couple weeks ago for $899,000. And usually what they do in the neighborhood is a developer will buy these old homes from the 40s and 50s, they tear it down and they put up apartments. So it was getting very crowded because every time a house sold, more apartments would go in, and the infrastructure there was just never meant for that volume of people. So you're competing for a limited amount of space, and it was just getting very crowded. Everything was getting crowded. So I was thinking, maybe this isn't where we want to be. That kind of, not that we were pushed out, but we started to think, is this really...
It's not comfortable anymore.
Yeah, even if we could afford to buy this house, do we want to stay in this neighborhood knowing that all the other houses around us will be gone soon?
Yep.
Yeah, and Grandma and Grandpa lived directly across the street in a both of our houses were super cute, little 40s bungalows. And I'm like, I can't sit here and watch that house get bulldozed. Like, it would be devastating. I cried when they bulldozed the little pink house on the corner.
Yeah.
I went to work one day and came home and it was gone. And now there's just really ugly condos on there. And it's like, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So, like there was a necessity to move. That was very real. But also over the years, we've just seen our neighborhood change. And it was getting, a little more crimey and a little more kind of dirty and just super, super crowded every year. Just more and more and more people. And all the people in our neighborhood were mostly renters, and nobody knew each other. Nobody stayed
for more than a year. It was a constant rotation of people coming in and out.
There's something to be said for like stability in a neighborhood, right?
Yeah, we only knew two of our neighbors, and one was my grandfather because he lived across the street, and another was my friend Jerry. And I only knew him because he was into cars too, and we kind of hit it off. But other than that, I knew nobody on the street. Nobody waved. Nobody would make eye contact with you. It was not...
That's probably self-preservation when there's so many people.
Yeah,
it was. Everybody just was...
That's
I just got to get through it. I can't be interacting with this anymore.
Right. So there was that. And then I had friends who had, like the year before we decided to do this, they... lost their lease on their apartment, so they had to find a new place. And they spent over a year applying and getting rejected and applying. I think she told me that they did like 60 to 80 applications trying to find an apartment. Just to rent an apartment anywhere in the Los Angeles area. And it took them such a long time to find a place.
They ended up staying there, and they did find an apartment?
Yeah, they ended up finding a place like way out in the San Gabriel Valley. And it was, it's like a one-bedroom.
This is giving me anxiety.
Yeah, and
thinking about it.
It was scary. So that was scary because I'm like, okay, like if
I'm kind of now understanding, because you read online all these people talking about like you can't buy a house or like all this kind of stuff, and it's like if you're in a really expensive area, you just can't do it. I think Erin, you said this after you guys were under contract, was that you kept looking. Like, just to make sure you weren't going to have buyer's remorse.
Which I think you told me, like, don't do that.
Like, it's too late now. We're under contract.
And a part of me was like, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be looking. You're going to you're going to regret looking. Don't go picking up rocks.
Right.
But I never saw a single, even casually, like a couple weeks ago, I popped on there because I still get like notifications from all the housing apps constantly. Nothing, not a single house that even comes close to how much I like this one. It's like, I really feel like this was the one. And we really lucked out that we got it.
That is lucky.
I can't believe it.
There are a lot of houses. I think there would be more than one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I said the other day, like, I'm sure we could have been happy in a number of places. Yeah. But this one really feels like it is one of the ones for us, for real.
Oh, yeah, it's been...
One of the things that you guys talked about before you even moved here was concern for you and like what kind of art community. You knew that there was an art community in Northeast, but there were like all these places that you were considering. I think we were looking at something in Maple Plain for a long time.
that house was cool, but
it was so far out there.
Yeah.
Sorry. You're not the only person that I've actually had to talk to about like, who's got a deep vested interest in the arts, and how is that going to play out here? And I'm not an artist. I like to admire it, but I can't answer that personally. So why don't you talk about like beyond just what you're doing in your own studio?
Yeah.
But you were saying like you found a lot of outlets.
Yeah. So for all you artists out there, this is frankly the place to be. I mean, having grown up in, the Los Angeles area, and then, we've been to New York. Those are like the two other big art kind of mecca-y places that I think of when I think of this country. And yeah, I had a notion that there was a pretty robust art scene in Minneapolis, but I had no idea the extent of it, and I am like daily just blown away by it. So yeah, like I have my own studio in the house, and my art in particular is a little more niche. I found it to be a little more rare here, which kind of surprised me.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a great thing, because I wasn't sure if there was going to be like, I feel like I was sort of like a medium fish in a very big pond in California, especially in Southern California, because there's lots of metal art stuff happening there. But we're also spread out, which I think kind of helped me be successful there. But then here, I feel like there's tons of more traditional, like drawing and painting and photography, and the theater is really huge here, and performing arts and like ceramics and stuff like that, but not a whole lot of metal art and art jewelry stuff. So that's good news for me. I can bring that.
I love that, because now you're going to be like the go-to person.
Yeah, and in a couple of spots that I've just sent proposals to recently, like I will literally be the person. So that's awesome. I'm super excited.
I love that so much. I love it.
But for anybody doing pretty much any art medium that I can think of, like especially if you teach, which is what I do, and I found it just really easy. I was really nervous about being able to build, because I went from teaching almost full-time to, oh my gosh, we're going to move and all my students are going to be reset to zero. Like, how do I rebuild that? Because that took years to accumulate enough to where I was, supported. And then it's just scary, it's a big change. And he was always very like, you'll be fine. It's going to be great. And again, he was right. But, I was nervous, and I just thought, it's going to be so much work, and how long is this going to take? And what am I going to do in the meantime? Like, are we going to be able to make enough money? Am I going to go have to work at Dairy Queen? Like, what am I going to do? So, not that,
nothing wrong with DQ.
We
love
Dairy Queen. We, at least once a week.
He's like, no, we love DQ.
No, and there is one like almost walking distance from the house, which is a big plus, and they're hiring. So I always just keep that in the back of my mind just in case. But and that's something else I really like about Minnesota is like I didn't have to have any kind of special business license.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, like I did in California.
I wasn't going to ask that because I thought maybe.
Yeah, just as an aside, it was much easier to get set up as a business.
I'm glad you're saying that too, because one of the things that I think, I don't know what the answer is to this. Is it a business friendly,
so far, I think so. Yeah, more so than California for sure. Because everywhere you turn, California just wants more money from you for like a business license or some sort of tax or something.
It's like Illinois.
No, you have your state license, and then and then the city wants their cut, and then it's
the
so
state,
many layers.
Like the state resale license in California was free, but as soon as I applied for it, I got a letter from our city that was like,
they're like, you're doing that?
You're a business, are you? Would you mind giving us $170 a year for your home-based business license?
I actually would mind.
Yeah, so I was prepared for that. It's not a big deal. I'm like, whatever, I want to be on the up and up. But yeah, I checked out. I called, once we knew what city we were going to be in, I called Fridley, and I think I talked to Marge or somebody over there, and she was so nice. And she was like, oh no, just,
Like, did you have any misconceptions about what it would be like to move here? And, or did you feel like, it's pretty much what I expected?
I think for the most part, it's what I expected because I've been here before. But if you hadn't visited, and hadn't kind of grown up, visiting and being around these types of people, you might have some misconceptions. I feel like all of the like jokes and stereotypes about Midwesterners and Minnesotans in particular are true, but in like the best way. I love it. I think it's charming and it's super cute, and I didn't realize how influenced I was by the people in my family who are from here. Like, I just, know things I didn't even realize I knew that ended up being, very Minnesota-specific things.
There's definitely a culture to Minnesota.
Yeah.
And with so many people...
I guess that I really do want to hear Matt's perspective, since he's kind of more...
Since, people here, it's a little bit, it's very different from California, obviously. The people here are, it's a little bit slower pace, and people are willing to chat.
I like that.
You're gonna get asked, what are you doing this weekend, by at least 3 people on a Friday. Whether you know them or not, you could just be at the grocery store checking out. Oh, are you doing anything this weekend?
Yeah, somebody asked me that the other day, and I'm like,
it happens a lot.
I'm working.
Yeah, that's just not a thing in California ever.
Oh, really?
Ever? No.
No, weather's always a topic of conversation. You can go anywhere and talk about the weather. I don't think I had any misconceptions. I had a lot of hopes that it would be charming, and it does. It has, for being a big city, it has kind of a small town feel.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
And people are very friendly. I'm not used to people waving. Not used to neighbors stopping by and saying hi, and giving you a wave and just seeing what's going on. So I would just, things that I wasn't used to that I found here. But as far as misconceptions, I don't know. It was everything I hoped it would be.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I think that's more how I feel about it. Not that, because you hear, Minnesotans are very proud people. They love their state. Oh my gosh,
this place, I've never lived somewhere that was more into itself than Minnesota.
I know.
Us neither.
And neither have we. And it has been just so neat because people just love it here. And that's one of the things when I tell people I moved here from California, they're like, why? And my aunt just recently moved. They just bought a house in Nashville, which is a really hot market right now for Californians. First it was Austin, then it was Portland, and they're moving across Texas and into Tennessee. And she's gotten some pushback from some of the people in the neighborhood about Californians coming in and driving up prices. And
in other places.
Yeah.
Here has
Texas
been
in particular.
the opposite. Everyone, first they give me that quizzical look and like, why would you move from California to here? And I tell them we've got family, we've been here before, we really like it, and they are just tickled that we like it here and wanted to be here. And everybody has been so welcoming, like, we're so glad to have you.
Yeah.
I have not had any California negative. Now, the guys at work tease me about being from California.
Yeah, for sure.
But people are very welcoming.
I think this is so funny because I often laugh about Minnesotans because they love Minnesota, like, beyond anything. Like, it's almost unreasonable. But I can see it, like, I feel like it's justified. But at the same time, if anybody says they're moving here from somewhere else, they're like, what? Like, they almost can't believe that somebody would choose to move here, even though they themselves love it so much.
Yeah,
like,
that
it's
happens
kind of
a lot.
Very strange to me that they hold these two ideas in their head at the same time.
Like, just shocked.
Yeah.
That why did you want to come here?
Right.
Like, I'm like, have you looked outside? It's beautiful out there.
Beautiful.
So it's been really funny to see the reactions and people. For as much negative press as California gets, people are fascinated by the weather.
Yeah. Or lack thereof.
Yeah, pretty much lack
Because,
thereof.
like, if you're here and you're, like, sick of being cold or, like, you have issues with that, the idea of that sounds pretty good.
Sound on paper.
I'm sure it's
great.
If you don't like the cold or the snow, and I say, like, oh, where we come from, it's just like 79 and sunny, like severely sunny all the time. And that might sound like heaven. I mean,
because they're not living in a 365.
Yeah. And if you just aren't a cold weather person, I guess I could see how that would be appealing. But having never experienced a seasonal change before in my life, and you asked us how old we were earlier. Like, I'm 40.
I'm 45.
45. Like, we've literally never, I've only seen, the fall colors in Hallmark movies. Like, this is something that happens on film.
You have to tell about last fall.
Oh my gosh, that was
blew my mind.
Thing, though, when you came in, like, the corn, the picture of Matt with the corn.
So cute.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, I think the people who are from here, and we're probably the same way about California. Like, that's my normal. Like, I've been there my whole life and I'm sick of it. But we also have particular likes that California just doesn't provide. Like, before I studied art, I was going to be a meteorologist, so I really am into weather and I love storms and, all kinds of, weather events and extreme weather, and that doesn't exist where we are ever.
That's wild.
We're lucky if we get any, like, measurable rainfall in a year. Just boring. Like it
things.
never changes. It never changes. And then you watch, Christmas movies and it's snowing and there's, and people are looking forward to fall and looking forward to spring. And I'm like, what does that even mean? I have no idea.
It's the beginning of December, 85 degrees out, and we've got the air conditioning running.
Yeah. Or, it's 97 in the living room and our wood floors are like physically hot to walk on. And I'm like, I'm so tired of this. And like
everybody looks forward to it.
Yeah.
It's just kind
Even
of
winter, right?
it's coming, and you have something to kind of look forward to, because Minnesota has so much to offer in every season.
Right.
Yeah.
There's always something to look forward to in each season.
I can't wait for you guys to have a real winter, because I feel like for some reason people in other places think that everything must come to a halt and that it's snowing here all year round, but it
does not stop.
It doesn't stop.
That might have been the one misconception we had, because I did kind of have that assumption. We've been here in the winter, but only for short little stays. So to live through one, assuming, if
You're
it's
never
like,
going to leave the house.
if it's snowing out, like people are gonna everything shuts down and gets canceled or whatever. And no, not at all. We even saw one day it was it was a really pretty day and it was coming down like just in big fluffy bits, and we were like, oh wow, I wonder, like, should we take a walk? Like, do people take a walk? Are our neighbors going to think we're insane? Like, are people going to be like, well, looking out their blinds going, those crazy Californians.
These kids from California, and they're
running around in the snow like an idiot. But then we saw like a lady across the street like pushing a baby carriage and her dog, and they're just walking in it. So we're like, oh, this is allowed. Okay, cool. And
people still riding their bikes to work.
Yes.
Like nothing
People
stops.
out for a jog, people out walking the dog. It doesn't matter.
And there's all kinds of festivals and art fairs and like
for every season. And the weather, hot, cold, whatever, the city does not stop.
Yeah, and there's always stuff to do. And
always.
But like fun stuff we just didn't have around us. And if there was something like some kind of festival around us, it's an hour drive in traffic both ways, and it's hot and gross and expensive, and it costs $50 to park, and it's miserable.
I think some of from what you've said though, like, makes me think like, and I've had this feeling overall, is like I feel like life here in Minnesota feels more nostalgic.
Yes,
I guess
it does.
It does.
Something like,
it does.
I'm not like that. You don't see everywhere
There's
anymore.
a charm
but, like,
to
what
it.
You think of.
Yeah, there's a charm to it and a warmth to it, like the place and the people, that we just don't feel where we're from at all. Yeah, this is just real life here, and chatting with people. Like, we were late today in part because we had to stop at the gas station and we had to talk to Sharon about her cruise coming up, and she's going to be gone for 2 weeks.
It's important to get the lowdown on Sharon's
Right, and I mean, like, talking to the clerk at the gas station is like such a foreign...
Don't be rude and leave.
Oh, no, you can't.
Like, you
I
can't.
actually, you don't want to offend people.
No need.
Other places move a little quicker.
Yeah, for sure. And that is one thing I do like about here, is the pace is a little bit. Some people talk about island time in Hawaii, and Minnesota has a kind of a similar thing. Things are very chill.
We're on prairie time.
Yeah, people like to chat. People like to say hi. People like to be friendly.
Do you think then, I'm going to go another direction with this, is there's a reputation that people aren't, like, it's hard to make friends here. Do you find that?
I feel like...
Although, I'm not actively looking. Honestly.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the type of person that you are, because we're not super, super, super social. And
it's like you have enough at home, right?
Yeah.
And like with your jobs and like.
Yeah, I think and I also think when people get to a certain age, like, you kind of have the friends that you have, and you're just not actively looking. Now, for us being in a new place, like, I wouldn't mind knowing some people here, because my friends have lived out of state from me for a long time anyway.
Yeah, that's how I do.
So yeah, like, I mean, my best friend's in New York. My sister lives in Portland. And then my two kind of metalsmithing friends live in LA, which might as well be another state from where we lived in Orange County in California.
Oh, even when you lived there.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it would be 2 hours minimum to drive to go see them. So we would meet in the middle here and there. But so, I mean, I think that's just people. I don't know if that's a Minnesota specific thing. I think one thing I did notice, though, that I heard that is true, is that people... Like, compared to California, a lot of people in California aren't from there. There's a lot more people coming in from other places and settling from places like the Midwest. and all over the place. And then there's people like us who've been there our whole lives. We all just kind of blend. Here, I have found, like, everyone in our neighborhood, there's a couple houses around us that are rentals, and then the rest of them are people who have literally lived in this neighborhood, and sometimes in that house for 30, 40 years or their whole lives. Like, the people behind us were, I don't know if they were born in Fridley, but that's where their grandparents' house was, and now they live there. And
I see that in my neighborhood too. Like grandkids moving into the grandparents' house. Like they just can't take it.
The original owners of our house passed away in like 2015. Yeah, their oldest son lives on our corner still. Mm-hmm. And so people don't really leave here.
The other thing that they do is if they leave, they come back.
And that's my family story. So both my aunts moved to LA. They worked in the film industry, but once they got married and started having their kids, they moved right back here again. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've found. That and that may be, part of the reason why people feel like it's especially hard to make friends, because people, you're kind of like, you're the outsider. And I definitely feel that. Like, I feel like an outsider. But then, like we were saying, in California, everybody's so transient and coming and going all the time, you kind of feel like an outsider there too, I mean, to be honest. So that's not a new feeling. Mm-hmm. But there's something about how close everyone seems to be here, and how, everybody knows everybody. I mentioned the clerk at the gas station to my neighbor, and she's like, "Oh yeah, Julie, we've known her for years. Her son went to high school." Like, everybody's went to high school with somebody's kid.
And that is something like that's a great thing, but it's also a word of caution. Because if you somehow have beef with somebody, keep it to yourself, because the minute you say it to your neighbor, they know that either that person or somebody adjacent to them. And it's not a joke. There's like, I don't know how many people here, like a couple million people. Yeah. And somehow, you are never more than like 2 connections away.
It's 3 degrees of separation from just about anybody.
Yes.
Somebody knows somebody.
Yes.
And it's always somebody they went to high school with.
Yeah.
Everybody's connected through their high school.
It's funny, but it's true. And I think that's what gives it.
That's actually one of the reasons I think people are very polite here. Is because you don't know, you don't want to accidentally offend. Yeah. And you don't know who you're talking to, like, and who they know.
Yeah, slight benefit to being an outsider.
Kind of weird when you're coming in from the outside, though, because it's not an expected thing, and then you're like, "Oh shit, I put my foot in my mouth there."
On the other hand, like, I don't know anybody, so I don't have any beef.
You don't care. All right, one more question for you guys. I think the last thing I have is just like, if you had advice that you wanted to give, or I don't know if you have any, but maybe you do. Like, is there something you would tell people if they're thinking about doing something similar to what you did?
Yeah. I definitely advise visiting during any season you're concerned about, so you have at least a notion of what you're getting into. And if you know that you're not like a snow person, like, just don't. Like, you won't be happy. You're not going to be happy here. We like hockey and we like skating, and I'm more of a jacket and boot person. I hate being hot, so I was like, winters sound fine.
I'm going to have shirts printed that say I hate being hot, because I say it all the time too. I'll give you one.
I just, I know I'm not a desert summertime person, so I wasn't worried about that. And I've been skiing before. I'd been in the snow. You hadn't really. No. But I feel like you had an idea of what it was going to be like. Oh, yeah. And we, it's always a learning curve. Like, I don't know how long I'm going to want to shovel it out of my driveway. But I also hope we just get to the point where we can hire someone to do stuff like that if we need to.
Watch out for steep driveways if you're looking at houses.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice.
If you're looking,
Watch out for a lot of steps. They do get icy.
Yeah.
Ice is a thing. But yeah, but steep and long driveways, they look great in the summertime. But imagine, when you're looking at some place, imagine how much you're going to have to shovel.
I love the practical advice. Yeah. That is very practical.
If you buy a house that has a sidewalk around it, you're responsible for clearing the sidewalk.
Yeah. Yep. We saw lots of cool corner houses for sale, and then I would look and go, "Oh, we're going to have to do all that."
That is not covered by the city. Yeah. You're on the hook for doing that. So
what is covered by the city is the fine that you get if you don't shovel.
Right. Yeah. Right. So there's some small things there. Luckily, we don't have that problem. We don't have a sidewalk, but it was a consideration. One thing that we kind of looking into, because I'm like, "Oh, we're going to get a snowblower. How are we going to do this? Yeah. I've never done it before." But I was surprised to find things you just didn't think about, like who's responsible for plowing certain things.
Yeah.
Getting an attached garage was a great move for winter time.
And that's actually not as common as it is in other places.
Right.
So
if you
depending on where you live, like if you're in the city, you're not probably having an attached garage, but if you're out in the suburbs, more likely.
And I don't know, I think I would push for suburbs. I thought I wanted to be closer into the city because I wanted a more like walkable neighborhood and all of that charm, but I do appreciate the space that we have. We don't have sidewalks in our neighborhood, so we don't have to plow those. We do have an attached garage, but we also have like, a 2-car garage. It's not the little teeny carriage size that you're going to find a lot of times in the older houses deeper into the city. We don't have an alley, which, in hindsight, I don't know, my worldview is a lot better. I just feel like...
My worldview.
I do feel a lot more relaxed here.
Get extra thick moisturizer in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like us, like I started to turn the heater off as I left for the day, like because we're used to save money. I would turn my heater off in California if I wasn't going to be home all day, and I had to like stop and go, oh, I can't turn this
Not
off.
all the way off.
No, the way off.
Turn it down though.
Yeah, I mean we would turn it down to like 68 or something, but like I went to turn it off, and I'm like, my cats will freeze to death. Like it's proper cold outside.
It can be serious.
So this little thing, and just do your research. Like just if you can, I would try to, visit in person. I understand that that's not always possible,
right.
And if that's not possible, then at least try and visit the area, experience some cold,
people ask me all the time about like, where should I live? Like they want to know like what neighborhood or something they should live in, and I can't answer that. But the other thing that's interesting is like you came with an idea of where you thought you wanted to live, and you had ended up living nowhere, like it wasn't
totally
even on your radar.
No,
it was not.
Literally in a city that no one had ever. I'd never heard of Ridley in my life.
So I think if I'm going to add something that I think would fit with you guys is like to be open-minded about where you're looking to.
Absolutely.
And like I'm so happy, and I know we've made the right decision. And like he gets to drive around for work and check places out that we thought we wanted to be, and I've done a little bit of that too. And we both come back home like, nope, this is it. This was the spot. Like even though we didn't know it at the time.
We watched every one of your neighborhood videos.
Yeah, we still do. They're great.
We still watch all your videos, but we watched all the neighborhood videos. We thought we knew what we wanted, and until we got
that sounds
here.
like my stuff's deceptive.
No, it's not. I mean, those places are.
No, there's still places that you cover that I would love to be, but. Finding Fridley was, I mean, it's perfect for us, and we didn't even know.
Yeah, and be open-minded.
Yeah, being open-minded about there's a lot of great little neighborhoods all over the place.
Yeah.
Each little area, and you're not far from anything. Each little area has its own personality, which is a little bit different too. Where there's a real community feel.
Yeah. One thing that I did that I would recommend, especially like for other artists who might be more home-based like me too, is because I liked working from home from California, but I was comfortable there and I didn't feel like disconnected or lost. But once I got here, he was leaving and getting to drive around all over the place and get used to, get his bearings, if you will. And I did start to feel kind of, like I was just floating out in space, and I didn't feel like a connection here. Even though I have family here, they live a half hour away and we don't see them every day. I just wanted to feel a little more connected to my community, to make it more homey. And there's like a ton of volunteer opportunities everywhere all the time, which that might be your thing. But what I did is I just got a little part-time job in my city. And so I could, be among the natives, and I thought that might help, and it really did, and I love it. It's like the coolest little place, very niche for me specifically, but I would recommend that. Like even if you can get a job like at a little grocery store or something where you're seeing all the people in your community.
I agree with that so much. There are some people that struggle, and I think it's because Minnesotans are not going to come knock on your door.
No.
You're going to need to be somewhere that's of interest to you, where you're going to be seeing the same people on a regular basis, because once you bump into them, like once you're familiar to them, they'll be warm to you and nice. I mean, like not that they're not warm, but more apt to be your community, then
It kind of breaks the ice a little bit. 'Cause
Yeah.
people kind of keep to themselves here, which is
mind their
nice.
own business.
They do mind their own business. That is definitely a thing. But if you're in like one of the things we were talking about, making friends and stuff. I'm sure once I start playing hockey again,
Yep.
I'll
You're
build
gonna have a whole crew.
a whole bunch of people. Whatever you do, what's jewelry, what's hockey.
Yeah.
There's pickleball. There's.
I'm like on the fence.
But I mean, whatever it is you do, there's people here doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Find your little spot, and you'll make friends once you connect on some kind of level, and people get to know you. Then it's no big
My
deal.
husband.
This move has been
Don't come here. It's terrible.
I actually sometimes feel like I shouldn't do
It feels like it's. I mean,
I want to protect it now because it's so great.
That's
it's,
what
I feel like Minnesota's always kind of overlooked. I think people don't give it much thought. People have a lot of misconceptions that people think it snows here year round.
Yeah.
I mean, people
Yeah.
don't really understand and haven't really given it a shot. And I think it's just one of those best kept secrets. But for us, it's been
Great.
It's been fantastic.
Minnesota. I'd consider it. It's
I'm so glad you wore plaid too. By the way.
Oh yeah, I have since invested in a lot more flannel.
Dang, like,
Well, watching people just get on with life gives
Yeah.
you kind of a confidence. Like,
Yes.
okay, this isn't scary because everybody else
Everybody's
is
still
doing
out.
it.
and the fact of the matter is, it lasts a long time. So, like, the cities have figured out, like, we need to plow, like, walkways at the parks and, like, make places for you to ice skate or,
Yeah.
Go cross-country skiing or whatever it is that's going to, like, make this you can't give up this much of your life. Like,
No, and then that too, like, and even my aunts who were born and raised here, they do complain about the length of the winter.
Yeah.
And after we've been here for a while, I might be saying something
around
different.
May, you're going to be like, all right.
But I don't know, like, I think maybe if you're coming from someplace like Southern California where that wasn't a thing and it's a kind of a novelty, like, the snow will reliably be gone by June. Like, you're not gonna have
Hopefully
it.
before the
Like, I've said May before and people have gone, no, it snows in May sometimes too. But really, like,
sometimes, but
by
it's not
then,
regular.
like, it's gonna end. And then the payoff is like nothing you've ever seen. Get yourself the right boots and the right jacket, and
Yes.
you will be absolutely fine.
That's good advice.
know.
All right, awesome, you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
no
appreciate
problem.
it.
No problem at all.
Thank you so much for watching. I do love to talk to people that meet me on YouTube, so if you have a question, let me know.